This is Evangelist George McTire of the Word of God Ministry coming at you once again. And in this clip, this video here, I'm going to bring about some disturbing information. Information that I don't know whether the authorities have actually given any thought to it, but it is something that, in my mind and from my experience, needs to be investigated. And that has to do with this infection of this coronavirus here in the United States. Now, in order for me to present the case to you, let me tell you why I'm getting ready to say what I'm going to say. Among other things, when I was in the military back in 1964, I was assigned to the Air Police unit of the Air Force. In other words, I was a policeman. During my training as a policeman, we were taught about how to investigate situations from accidents on up to crimes of robbery and even cases of killings, even though I never had any actual experience investigating crime like that. But the basics of situations which I have consulted with some friends that are police officers that deal in crimes of violence like killings and so forth. They shared some information with me which basically verified what I had already known, but it was nice to hear that what I was thinking could possibly be true. And what I'm going to basically show you from the title of this message is the fact that this coronavirus and the damage it has caused all through the United States and other countries was actually a planned, targeted attack on the United States. Now, people will say, well, how can you say that when, if you look at it, this virus is going on all over the world? And my answer to that is true. But there are a lot of situations and things that have occurred that indicate that in actuality what we are looking at is a conspiracy of the proportions. I had mentioned this once before, that when I was in military training, they say enemies a lot of times won't use a direct attack like bombings and things, or invasions, where you firing weapons and things like that. They have other means to carry out their goals, and one of those goals is chemical, biological, and radiological warfare. Now, the chemical warfare would be use of poisons and things like that. Poisoning the water, poisoning people. We saw a good example of that. You remember back when Kim Jong-un of North Korea had his brother assassinated here, or whatever country that the brother was in. I don't know whether I don't think he was here in the United States, but there's two women that came up and rubbed something on his face or something, and within 24 hours he was dead. and it's supposed to have been some kind of agent, chemical agent, that basically killed him within 24 hours. Then we have the case of the Russians use it. Well, this goes into possible chemical and radiological warfare. Some sort of agent was introduced into a person through their food that was highly radioactive uh, mixture of something that once it gets in your system, you're basically a walking dead person because they can't cure it or anything else like that. And this person died in a few weeks. I forget what it had something to do with some sort of uranium, something like that. But anyway, those are two attacks of basically chemical and radiological things. Plus, we have the things about dirty bombs and stuff like that. But see, even then, a bomb is still something that is more or less something to let you know that there is an actual enemy out there attacking you with bombs. So I'll say about those two chemicals. But then we have this third thing, biological. Now, biological means the use of things like viruses, germs, and whatever else type of thing that does not fit in the categories of chemical or radiological warfare. Biological warfare is the hardest one really to deal with because the way things go with biological warfare is you don't know just exactly what you're dealing with. You may not even suspect that it's a warfare weapon that's being used for warfare because by it being biological, it can be passed off as what we have today, cold, the flu, or pneumonia, or something like that. Any number of things where a virus can be looked at as being just something that just happens to appear, and it's basically going under the radar as being some sort of an attack. Nobody, I believe, has ever said that they thought that. Well, not too many people. I have when this first popped up. That's the first thing that came to my mind. But I had to check just to see if what I was thinking was true, and that meant that I had to start investigating, which is something police do. Not only that, but as a Christian, saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Spirit, I had the help of the Holy Spirit in also showing me things that brings everything together where the case can be made that this virus, this coronavirus, was manufactured and specifically brought to the United States, but also spread around the world to cover up the fact that the United States was the actual target of this, or the people that produced this virus, which is China. And so I'm going to put up some information here for you. I'm going to show you a chart. I'm going to quote you some numbers, and then I'm going to tie everything together as to why I say that China has targeted the United States in a biological warfare attack. And I'm going to also say how I believe that the Democratic Party is in collusion, whether they know it or not, with the sole purpose of benefiting from this virus in November. So I'm going to put up a chart here in a minute, and then I'm going to start quoting the numbers to you, and so you can see for yourself what I'm talking about. Now, I want you to take a close look at this chart. And what I want you to notice is, number one, the chart is a picture of a website that I occasionally visit that gives me an update minute by minute or hour by hour. I don't know how often they update it, but it is essentially a live representation of the cases of how this COVID-19 coronavirus is spread. If you look in the left-hand corner, the top left-hand corner, you'll see the name of the website, virusincov.com. That's the website. You can put this in your bookmark thing on your computer or something and check it out every day just to, keep track of the numbers. And down below that, it says last updated, and then after that, it shows you the date and the time that this picture was taken. And for this case, it says 2020-0503, which basically means on May the 3rd, 2020, I accessed and took a picture of this particular page on the website. Next to that, you see 13/25/09. That's 13 hours, 25 minutes, and 9 seconds. There's got UTC +7. That means that whatever time zone at the time when I took this picture, the time zone that this site was being processed from, it's giving you the particular time that the site was accessed or updated. So basically, but the time's not really important right now. I just want you to look at the date, which is May the 3rd. Today is Sunday, May the 3rd. All right. Go down to the countries, and you see number one is the United States. 1,160,838 is the total cases in the United States. Now, what this means, as I have explained before, is the total cases is, number one, the total cases of everybody, those that have recovered from the virus, those whose cases are still active, and those who have died. You add all of those numbers up and you will get the total cases. So anybody that tells you that more people have died than that, or so many people haven't been covered, no, this has covered everything from the time we started taking records on it. 1,160,838. The next country down behind us, number 2, is Spain. And I want you to look at those numbers. The number for Spain. We're going to just deal with the total cases. Total cases in Spain, 245,567. Number 3, Italy, Total cases 209,328. The way this site has the states numbered goes to show the one with the most cases is number one, and then it goes down from there all the way down. And so that means that the United States has had the most cases of any other country in the world of this virus. Now, here is the point that I want you to take a look at. Let's just look at Spain and the United States. There is a big disparity between the number of cases in the United States versus the number of cases in Spain. What I wanted to do is I wanted to find out how big of a difference that is. And so what I did is I divided the 1,160,838 by the number of cases that are in Spain. What I came up with was a number that, quite frankly, is astounding. We have almost 5 times as many cases as Spain does. Now, this is important from the standpoint of being a police investigator, and from the standpoint of looking at things where other people see, they are looking at things, but they don't really see certain things that basically jump out at you. A good police officer or investigator would say that according to these numbers, it's almost quite obvious that the United States of America was targeted, because how could you have almost 5 times as many cases of this virus over the second most cases, the country with the second most cases? How can you have, actually the number was 4.7 something, or 4.8, I'll just round it up to 4.8. If you've got that many more cases than the state right behind you, that should let you know that according to the numbers, it's almost as if it was by design. But we want to go a little further than that. But for right now, I just want you to take in these numbers while I come back to you and present you with my theory on the fact that this is a targeted attack on the United States. Okay, there you have it. You looked at the numbers. You see that the United States has at least almost 5 times more cases of this virus than the next state behind it, which happens to be Spain. Now, one thing I didn't show you on the chart, because the part of the page that I took the numbers from was down below the opening section of the page where they gave you the total number of cases of the virus in the world. If you go up and look at that number, the number is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500,000 and some odd thousand or so, because I'm not looking at the thing, I'm just trying to do it from memory right now. But what it's showing you is 3,500,000 or 600 and some thousand cases worldwide. And down below that number, they list how many countries they are talking about, which happens to be, at this particular time, 212. So we got 212 countries, including the United States, with 3,600,000 and some odd thousand cases of the virus. That includes those that have recovered, those that are still active, and those that have died. And the thing is, if you look at that number, then the United States has another great disparity, is the fact that one country, the United States, has 1/3 just about of all of the cases of the coronavirus. Now you couple that with the fact that you got 211 other countries splitting the other 2/3. That's way, way, way out of proportion of what it should be if this virus was spreading, just like any other virus or the flu or something like that. But no, that's not what is happening. This is what I would call a targeted attack on the United States by China for a specific purpose. And I believe that specific purpose is to affect the election that's coming up in November of this year for president. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me tell you why I'm explaining it like this. As I mentioned earlier, I was a policeman in the Air Force. I know about how to investigate accidents, crime scenes, and the like. And one of the things that I learned about, and I had talked this over sometime a little while back with some police friends of mine, and I showed them what I was thinking. And when they looked at it, they said, you might have a point there. And this is in order to explain it, let me use this scenario. If I come to a crime scene where multiple people have been shot, one of the first things people want to do is, if you're going to investigate the shootings, whether the people are alive or dead, or some are alive or some dead, or whatever it is try to figure out what kind of an attack was this. Was this a drive-by, or was it a targeted attack? Well, and the reason that you can find out whether or not it's a targeted attack is simple. If you have other victims that are maybe just wounded, maybe with 1 or 2 gunshots, and you have another person that might be wounded or dead that's been shot 6 or 7 times, then that is an indication right there that this person that was shot 6 or 7 times was targeted in the shooting. So then the next thing would be, well, the other people that got shot must have been just innocent bystanders that just caught stray bullets and the like. So basically, the police would go from the point of the fact that this was a targeted shooting on this particular individual, and that the other people were not really targeted, but they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, which would normally sound logical, except for one thing. What if this was a targeted shooting on the individual that was shot 5 or 6 times, but somebody wanted to make it look like it was not a targeted attack, but rather a drive-by, they would intentionally shoot other people for the sole purpose of trying to make it look like that it was a drive-by when actually it was a targeted attack. Now you say, who would do something like that? Well, the criminal element is no exclusion from this. In fact, if we look at a circumstance where a person might be in jail waiting to go to trial on first-degree murder, and it might be a case where if the person's found guilty, they could be put to death, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But the person finds out that there's only one witness to this the shooting where he may have killed this person may have killed somebody or something like that. There's only one witness that can identify him, and this guy will call and ask some of his buddies out there in the street to find this person and get rid of him. And so the people go out, they try to find the individual, and they happen to find him, and the person happens to be in a group of people. Well, it would be no great thing for them to essentially target this individual and shoot and kill him alone. But if they did that, then the police would be operating from the standpoint is that this person is in jail, had his friends come and shoot and kill this individual to shut them up. On the other hand, if these individuals shot and killed this person and shot 4 or 5 other people that might be in the close vicinity or around this person, then the police might have their suspicions that this was a hit and possibly a drive-by, but then at the same time, they can't really go on that because, naturally they wouldn't begin to think that what it is that these people may have intentionally shot these other people to make it appear that it was a drive-by, which would there alleviate the police from having to operate from the standpoint that the person in jail is the one that orchestrated this killing of this witness. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So in other words, it's no great thing to shoot other people to assuage the idea that this was a targeted hit. Well, if you can understand that, then you can understand what I'm saying about the United States being targeted and all these other countries are innocent victims that were also targeted, not because China necessarily had anything against them or anything along that nature, but because of the fact China did not want to be in the position of having produced this virus, then using it in the United States, where the only people that had the coronavirus was the United States and no other country was affected, that would be a red flag right away that China attacked the United States with this warfare, with with biological warfare. So in order to cover that up and assuage any suspicion that it was China deliberately targeting the United States, they affected everybody that they could. And as a result of that, nobody is thinking, hey, China targeted the United States, because the first thing people are going to say, man, you crazy, because look at all of these other countries got the disease. Why would you say that the United States was targeted? Well, like I'm saying, look at the numbers. 5 times as many people have the virus, cases of virus in the United States than the second most cases in Spain. We have nearly 5 times as many. Then you look at the total picture of 3,500,000 and some odd thousand or 600 some thousand uh, people world. What I said, 3,500,000 and some thousand, or maybe 3,600,000 some thousand. I'm not looking at the numbers. Uh, Worldwide, and of that, 1/3 of all the cases out of 212 nations, the United States has 1/3 of them. So that means 211 other countries share the other 2/3. That is way out of proportion for something that was incidental, like, just a regular flu that just got away and spread throughout the world or things like that. No, this was a way to try to cover up an actual attack on the United States by China. Now, the case then becomes, why would China want to do this? Well, see, then that gets into our situation here. China is wanting to do this because ever since, well, first of all, China has been hurt financially and other ways by the policies of this president, President Trump. When President Trump took office, he looked at all of the so-called agreements and things that the United States had with other countries, including China, and he saw that in many instances, China and a few other nations had agreements with the United States that basically took advantage of the United States. China especially, because if you look at it, practically everything we build, everything that we buy, everything that is that sometimes we consume, clothes and things or whatever the case may be, a vast majority of that comes from, guess what? Who? Where? From China. And see, people have been complaining about jobs and things being shipped over to China, and how that, there's child labor laws and things like that. They violate that, and everything else, they complaining about China, this, that, and other. China's sitting over there just racking up money from every which way, from not just the United States, but the rest of the free world and so forth. And Donald Trump come in and he saw what was going on. What was drawing a lot of businesses from the United States to China was the fact of the low wages, or the low cost of production of products and things like that. Donald Trump said, no, we're not going to have that. I'm going to put an end to this. So he canceled the agreements. Well, when he canceled the agreements and started raising the tariffs on Chinese goods coming into the United States, then manufacturers were faced with the fact that it would be cheaper to be back in the United States and manufacture their products in the United States, and to give the American consumer opportunities, or give the Americans chance to have more jobs and things like that, to help the economy here in the United States. Not alone, also not ignoring the fact that China was also doing a lot of espionage, spying on trade secrets from companies and from from the digital thing, computers and things and weapons and stuff like that. All this stuff, Chinese people were the government now, not the people, but the government was doing things, basically enriching China and things at the expense of the United States. Donald Trump said, no, that's going to stop. So when that happened, China began to suffer financially as jobs were leaving, were closing down and things, and China was getting in a position where they were starting to be hurt by these policies. So they had a reason to want to get rid of this president. Now, they weren't thinking about assassination or anything else like that, because that's just too archaic. They could find other means to do it. So what they come up with is a biological warfare, because that would be something that you couldn't essentially detect as being a direct attack on the United States, because these are just germs and viruses and things. They just spread all over the world. They get on people, and they walking and they transfer the thing. You know how they talk about the fact the viruses things are spread. That's why we're being told to stay 6 feet from each other, cover our mouths and things with masks and things, so when we cough we don't spread germs. But nobody's actually considering that this was a targeted attack on the United States. Not everybody. I did. I didn't really notice the numbers and things until I actually went on a website and saw the numbers. The website that I just showed you the page on, and looked at the numbers, and then it verified right there that this was very possibly a targeted attack by China on the United States for that purpose. Now, the thing is, China also realized that the best time to do this was at the time when the United States is about ready to get into electing a new president, or re-electing Donald Trump, or putting a Democrat in the White House. So the idea that this virus, because this is what really drew me to get suspicious about it in the first place, is the fact that the virus crops up during an election year, 2020. It pops up and starts becoming a problem in 2020. That was what was drawing my attention to it in the first place. Had it been any other year, I might not have thought that much about it. But here's an election year. And the thing is, when I looked at it and I see the damage that it's done, do you realize that this virus has basically wiped out everything that was gained under Donald Trump? In fact, it has almost done it a 180 degrees, where 1 minute we had record low unemployment. Record low unemployment. Now we've got record unemployment. And the numbers are getting worse because everybody's staying at home. Businesses have shut down. If you look at the way the state of the states and things like that, if people aren't working, then they can't earn any money to pay any income tax. Cities can't fund their services because they aren't receiving any revenues from income tax, from the income tax of people working. It's just a mess. And that's only part of the problem, but you can understand the way the economy is tanking, and businesses are shutting down. Farmers are having to destroy their crops because they can't get the crops to the market because the markets are shut down and things like that. I heard ranchers and things talking about the fact they're going to have to start killing cattle because they can't get the cattle to market and things, which mean the meat prices and stuff are going to go up. All of this stuff is getting to the point where America is almost turning into one of these socialist or even third world countries and things where you gotta have all of this stuff going on, people getting regulated as to when they can leave the house and stuff. I mean, it's just a mess. And in a situation like this, Donald Trump is being put in a position where he can't run on anything except for the fact that he's trying to battle this disease. But then we've got the Democrats talking about the fact how incompetent he is, how his administration was unprepared to deal with a situation like this, and that he shouldn't be in office. And you got Democrats basically jumping on and falling all over each other, trying to show that Donald Trump is incompetent. He needs to be booted out of office, while at the same time they're trying to excuse anything about China by saying that China, is by him accusing China, that's a racist statement. They don't want him calling it the Chinese flu or the Wuhan flu because that's racist. But they don't talk about the fact that a long time ago we had, what was it, the Hong Kong flu. We had I think the Shanghai flu. We've had swine flu. You name the flus and things by the countries or cities or whatever it is, or whatever the flu originated from. That's how you name it. But for some reason or other, the Democrats are falling all over themselves trying to say you can't blame China for the flu and things like that. That's a racist statement. But like I'm saying, look at the numbers. The numbers are showing that this must be a targeted attack because we have so many more cases than Spain does. And on top of that, we have 1/3 of all the cases that the world has, with 211 other nations behind us that share the other 2/3. That's way out of proportion for something that's random. Do you understand? Now, the question then becomes, the Chinese government is looking at the situation that since the Democrats appear to be friendly toward them, it's almost as if the Democrats are in collusion with them to spread this virus in the first place. Now, I know that sounds like a reach, but just think about it. Democrats have been trying to get rid of Donald Trump before he even got in office. But when he got in office, they tried everything they could. Collusion with Russia, collusion with the Ukraine, him and his molesting women and things like that. All these charges they threw against him and trying to impeach him and things, nothing worked. Everything they tried failed. And now, here comes China. I don't know whether they made a deal with the leadership of the Democratic Party. I'm not talking about the whole Democratic Party, but the leadership of the Democratic Party. Somebody knows something about how this virus is coming through the United States, and I actually believe that the Democratic Party has something to do with it. The leadership of the Democratic Party. And I think it might be funded by their chief financier of funding their campaigns and stuff, one George Soros. And as I have said, China seems to feel that if a Democrat gets in office, that the Democrat will undo these changes to these agreements and things that and reduce the tariffs that Donald Trump has put in place so that China can get back to doing what it used to do before Donald Trump came in office. So like I said, we got the election year. We've got these outrageous numbers showing that evidently the United States was being targeted by China. It comes up during an election year. China, I mean, the Democrats, like I say, they're falling all over themselves trying to uh, give China a pass. It wasn't their fault, or this, that, and other. But yet and still, we do have cases of the fact that this virus was created in a lab. Now, what would they be creating a virus like this for in a lab in the first place in China, unless they plan on using it against somebody? You see what I'm saying? This virus was created. It didn't just, pop up. Now, by it being COVID-19, there have been other coronaviruses, but this particular virus has something. They use a term a lot of times when it comes down to certain chemical diseases and things where they call it weaponized. In other words, they take a virus or they take something, they add something to it and make it 10, 1,500 times more potent than what it was before before they doctored it up. So that's what I'm thinking happened, because we have had coronavirus before. In fact, people have been putting on Facebook that showed bottles of with the word coronavirus on it of antidotes to fight the virus. But like I was telling people, that's just earlier strains of coronavirus. This strain here, nobody had a cure for, which would make it even more potent, is because of the fact it's going to take time, supposedly, to find a cure for it. So we have all of that to think about. Is the Democratic Party, the leadership of the Democratic Party, in collusion with China to produce this virus, spread it throughout the United States for the sole purpose of being able to win the election in November? I think that is a very good case, a very real possibility. And yet and still, we have people today that just don't want to believe it. Oh man, you gonna talk about the fact that people gonna go around killing all these innocent people and things for the sole purpose of getting Donald Trump out of office so that the Democrats can take over and reverse things? Yes, that's what communism does. See, when it comes to communism, communism is a type of belief system where people are to be sacrificed or killed or put on the altar of sacrifice for the sole purpose of the betterment of the state. It's nothing for communists to kill innocent people just so that they can get things the way they want them. They've done it over the past 100 years or so. You go back and check the record. Socialism, communism, Stalinism, all of that stuff is wrapped into one thing, and that is killing people for the sole purpose of protecting and enriching the state. And if you still can't believe that, then you can take this for instance. All of these other things, communism and so forth, and carrying on, all of them go against what God says is right and wrong. In fact, as far as they're concerned, there is no God. Man is his own God. And in the case of China or some communist nations, their leaders are considered gods. Therefore, if they are like that and they are against God, well, there's only one entity in this in all of creation that is battling against God, and that is the devil or the Antichrist or Satan or Lucifer or whatever you want to call him. And you know, like St. John 10:10 says, the thief cometh not but for to steal, kill, and to destroy. So you got a group of people, a nation that is aligned with the devil, and you worried about whether or not thinking about the fact, oh, they wouldn't really kill people like that. Oh, yes, they would. And then what makes it even worse is you got preachers out here, and since I'm black, I'm talking to the black community. We got black preachers like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and Michael Eric Dyson walking around talking about the fact that Trump is the problem. We need to get rid of Trump and put a Democrat in office. How stupid is that? They supporting people that are enemies of the Christ that they claim they are serving. That's stupidity. So, in closing, I just want you to remember what I am saying here, because like I say, if you want to check the numbers, go on the website. But like I say, I was looking at the numbers right here. And if you think even further, look at who some of the main people were that were running that almost got to be the Democratic nominee for running for president. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, both of which are avowed socialists, which is just a step or two short from being full communist. And they just barely got lost to Joe Biden. But since Democrats all stick together, if Joe Biden gets in office, you know, he's already talking with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And since the Democratic Party supports its own, then Joe Biden, even though he was trying to be more moderate, is being put in a position that he's going to have to come a little bit further to the left, over to the side of thinking of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, if he wants Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's people to vote for him. So when you go to the polls in November, you think about that. What do you want? Because I'm going to tell you this. Bottom line, we have a choice to either vote for keeping Trump in office, or vote for a political party that has shown itself to be capable of doing anything just to get back into power. And if it means killing people, they'll do it. If it means going against God, they'll do it. And the thing is this, if we make the mistake and elect Joe Biden, you think you going through hell now? You ain't seen nothing. Because the choice can't be more clearer than it is today. You either vote for a man who at least tries to follow what God says is right and wrong, versus a political party who chooses to go totally against everything that God says. And if you put those people in power, then God's going to let this virus keep on going through the land. You never find a cure for it. Because remember, God could have stopped this thing a long time ago, back when it first came to fruition. Could have stopped the people from being able to make it, but he allowed it to happen because America needs to be punished for the evil that it's doing as far as supporting things like abortion, gay rights, affirmative action, separation of church and state, going against everything God says is right and wrong. We got it coming. If you look in the Old Testament and see what happened to nations that defied God back then, they got wiped out. America, through God's grace, has been allowed to stand, but if we keep on acting stupid, this nation is going to get wiped out as well. God says he does not change. So you got to think about that. I'm out of here.